Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Mel and I'm a crafter, knitter, living on the Orkney Islands off the north coast of Scotland. And this is where I talk a bit about my crafting, mostly knitting. In fact, today is all knitting, and yep, I can't remember which episode we're up to, but I think it's around 52-ish mark. I did intend to make a podcast in December. It is now the 7th of January. But December ended up being not quite as expected. We were both quite sick, well, not quite sick, but we were having bouts of colds and flus throughout December, and towards the beginning of the month an online friend found out an online friend had passed away, somebody who had known for around 15 years and had been quite influential and inspiring to me when I first moved to Orkney. And it kind of threw me a bit. It was quite a shock, both to me personally and everyone who kind of from our group from way back. It was all quite a shock to us all. She was one of those people, she was had quite a strong personality, and you could never imagine her not being here. It kind of threw me for quite a while. But anyway, moving onwards from that, I ended up doing quite a lot of crafting and knitting, mostly knitting, throughout December, and an intended recording sooner than this because now I have quite a pile of stuff beside me to talk about, and it's going to end up being a longer episode than I'd originally intended. So let's start with, let's talk about the knitting, and then if I can think of any of the live stuff we can chat more about it at the end. Finished objects. I am wearing my main large, actually I have two large, but main large garment fitted finished object for this episode. I was working on this on the last episode. I think I had knit the yoke at that point, although I'm not 100% sure. And it is my Boreal sweater. I will insert a video of me wearing it somewhere up here so that you can see it better, but it is a colourwork yoked sweater that is mostly colourwork throughout the majority of the body, and I have adapted this pattern from a Kate Davies pattern. It's not so much that it needed adapting, and the fit on this is the second Boreal that I've knit, and I've had some big major issues with fit with this, and it has been ripped out and reknit so many times before I finally got it to the point that I was happy with. So the pattern is the Boreal sweater by Kate Davies, and I think part of the problem is that it is one of the quite early patterns. I did look this up, and it is, I don't think it's wrote on this pattern, but it is many years old, this one, and like I said, the fit is not great. The pattern is written with, well, 8 sizes, but 4 pattern instructions and with 2 gauge options, which gives you 8 pattern sizes in effect. The pattern is supposed to be knit with, I think, DK weight yarn. The formatting on this is not great either. Let me see. I'm not sure, but the gauge is for a 4.5 stitches and a 4 stitch gauge, which per inch, which would be either a 16 or an 18 stitch gauge. Actually, it's an Aran weight, but the yarn that I'm using is quite a heavy Aran weight yarn. So what I've done is, where did I put the yarns that I've used? I think they're in here. I have used an Aran weight yarn, but like I said, it is quite heavy. I've used Drops Nepal, and I do not have very much left of this, which is the white, and also a navy blue. I'm not sure if I have labels in here for the actual colours. I might. Yes, 1101, which is the blue that I believe, and I think the white is 100. I just have a lot of blue labels and no white labels. Is that a white label? No, they're all 1101, so they must all be the blue. But it is navy blue and white. And the Drops Nepal and the Drops Alaska is quite a heavyweight yarn. It is bordering on a chunky rather than an Aran. I'm not sure if this will show on camera very well, but it is all over the floor now. It is quite chunky for an Aran weight yarn, and consequently if I had wanted to get even the looser weight gauge, which would be an 18 stitch gauge, it would be quite a tight gauge, tighter than I would like. So what I did was I used the gauge that I used and the kind of the stitch count for the Skoggenfjall sweater that I knit, which is designed by Diana Waller, which is a colourwork yoke sweater with trees in the yoke, and I'd used Drops Alaska for this when I had knit it, and done a 16 stitch gauge, I think. It should be wrote down. You would think I would remember this, but I have a lot of projects on the go currently. 14 stitch gauge, 21 rows per 4 inch, which is obviously considerably looser than 18 or 16 stitch gauge. So that's what I did. I used the stitch count and gauge for that. What I didn't take into account is that the Drops Nepal is slightly thinner than the Drops Alaska. So when I came to knit this, I started the yoke and I got all of the yoke knit actually, and I divided for the sleeves, and I got all of the colourwork done on the body, which is quite a bit past where you separate the sleeves, and realised it was too small because I thought it was making, because I thought my gauge would be 14 stitches. It would be a bigger sweater, and it turned out my gauge wasn't 14 stitches because the Drops Nepal was just that little bit thinner than the Drops Alaska, even though I was using the same needle size. So I had to rip back to where I'd separate for sleeves, cast on more stitches for the underarms to give myself more leeway for the bust. So I had a right carry on with this sweater. The bottom of the yoke was knit twice. The sleeves, the first sleeve, I think was knit 4 times to get it just how I wanted it. But I got there in the end. And I'm very happy with it now that it's done, and I'm really pleased that it's actually finished. Needle size, I used a 5.5mm needle, I think. No, I used a 6mm needle and a 5mm for the ribbing, and I have done 1x1 ribbing for the sleeves, and I have done 2x2 ribbing for the bottom of the sweater, and I think I did 1x1 for the neckline. Yeah, I did. I can't tell, actually. I can't, it's too close, it's too close. 1x1 ribbing for the neckline as well. So other than all the fit issues and having to reknit, I am really happy with it now that it's finished, and I think it looks much nicer than the red Boreal cardigan that I knit for Christmas last year, which the fit on that is terrible, and if I hadn't steeked it I would be frogging it out, but now it's steeked, I can't do anything about it. But it's a Christmas sweater and it doesn't get worn that often, whereas this is more winter, although you could use it as a Christmas sweater, it is more on the wintry side, and I'm quite happy to wear it all winter. So that is my first main finished object. My second one, let's just check I'm not going to throw any patterns that I've not done with on the floor. I still need this one. Is my box of socks. And I was going to do a separate video of my box of socks where I was going to talk about all of the pairs, but if you have been here throughout this year for the podcast, you will have seen all these socks at some point anyway. I will just talk about the ones I've done in December. If you're new here, I decided this year I was going to knit myself a box of socks, knitting at least one pair of socks for myself throughout the year, one pair of socks for each month throughout the year, and then at the end of December, I would have a whole box of socks of at least 12 pairs to go in my drawer. I knit socks all the time, so it's not like I have a shortage of them. It would just be like a nice, you know, a batch of socks at the end of the year. It turned out I ended up knitting more than 2 per month, so I have quite a lot of socks. And in here, actually have knit more socks since I've knit the box of socks. In here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 20, 25 pairs of socks. And I have 2 pairs of socks beside me that are not in the box. So this is my completed box of socks for myself for 2024, and they look absolutely fabulous. Really happy with them. I will obviously link all the links, well, I won't link to every single project page below, but I will link to my Ravelry project page below, and all the details for every single pair are down there, along with needle sizes and yarns and so on. So I will just talk about the ones that I've done that you haven't seen, which I think are only 2 pairs in here that I haven't spoke about on the podcast. Yeah, just the 2 pairs. So I will pop the lid on that box for the moment and throw it on the floor, and I will talk about these as quickly as I can. So I decided to do 2 pairs of Christmas socks for myself, and I've, on top of the ones that I was doing in November, and then I also knit a pair of Christmas socks for my husband as well. So the first pair, I have too many yarns here. In fact, I knit myself 3 pairs of Christmas socks. I've just remembered. And I don't have them with me because they've been worn and they're in the wash, but I can put a picture up. So the first pair, I was using up what I had left from some Christmas yarn from 2 years ago, I think, and I knit these socks. It looks like it has a jog, it's not, it's just where the gusset is. So I knit a pair of Anastasia socks in this yarn 2 years ago, and I had enough left over to knit a pair of vanilla socks. So that is what I've done. Most of my box of socks are vanilla socks. There is only a few that are actually patterned, either lacework or cabled. And my usual recipe, which you will have heard umpteen times if you're not new here, which is a Turkish cast on, stockinette, gusset, eye partridge on the base of the heel, turn, stockinette on the heel flap, stockinette on the ankle, and a 2x2 rib cuff. And I have done 40 rows on the ankle, 20 on the cuff, and I think 60 before the gusset for my socks, and this will be a 60 stitch around sock. I knit on 9-inch circular needles on a 2.25mm for this, and magic loop for toes, heels and cuffs, again on a 2.25mm needle. The only times I change that is if I'm using a slightly thinner yarn or an indie dyed yarn, in which case I will use a 2mm needle and do a 64 stitch round sock to account for the smaller stitches. So this main yarn, this one here, is what is left from a bowl of West Yorkshire Spinners, a signature 4-ply in the colourway Candy Cane. I do not know if I have the label left because there is so little of it. I can't find the label here, so I'm assuming I have thrown out the label for this. There is not much left. I could probably do toes and heels or just use it for mending. And for the contrast, I've used an undyed Regia yarn. It's just their Regia sock yarn in undyed, which I bought from Wool Warehouse. And the cuff is just some undyed merino bamboo that I am slowly working my way through using up because it's not tough enough for toes and heels, so I'm just using it for cuffs on socks that I am using undyed yarn for the toes and heels. So yeah, that is sock pair number 1. And the second pair of socks is actually an indie dyed sock yarn. I'm just slipping it on the blocker and about to slip it on the blocker upside down, which makes me wonder if I had that on the blocker upside down for the previous pair. I don't know. I don't think I did. This pair has got some interesting flashing going on, which I love with indie dyed yarns in socks. This yarn is by Felt Fusion. It is in a colourway Vintage Christmas, and it is on a merino nylon high twist base, and it is really bonny, really nice. And I was torn as to whether to do burgundy or green contrast, so I did both instead. I have done both socks the same with green heels and burgundy toes and heels. Because it is a merino sock yarn, I have done eye of partridge slip stitching on the base of the foot, behind the toe, on the ball of the foot, and also a little bit extra before I get to the heel itself. There is some slip stitching here, and these are the weak points for socks for me and where they tend to wear out. The contrasts that I've used are Regia Eco Line. They both are. There's one in burgundy and one in green. The burgundy is 3003 and the green is 3004. And these are just a standard commercial sock yarn, 75% wool, 25% nylon. And yeah, I'm really happy with them. They look really nice. They kind of have a cozy vibe. To me, they look very much kind of, I don't know, they scream Gryffindor common room to me. They have that kind of cozy, Hogwartsy vibe to them. And I'm really happy that they are done. And I still have half a cake left to knit a ball of socks, a pair of socks at some point. But I don't particularly like doing socks with these merino socks because I don't like doing the slip stitches, but they are a necessity because otherwise these merino socks just wear out very, very quickly for me. So if I see a skein of yarn that I really, really like in a merino nylon, then I will make the effort. But most of the time I prefer to knit with commercial sock yarn or Blueface Leicester nylon sock yarns instead, so I don't have to do the slip stitch pattern on the bottom of the foot. Okay, the other pair of Christmas socks that I knit for myself, I will have to put a picture up on the screen up here, and these are the Cup of Hot Cocoa socks by Stone Knits. And when I saw these, I just couldn't resist making these. They are fantastic. In fact, I bought a few more of a patterns to knit in the future. There was one with Christmas puddings on, which I'd hoped to knit as well, but just ran out of time. And there is a pair with robins on that I hope to knit sometime quite soon, actually. Okay, so the yarns that I used for that are many. I used several yarns for that. So the main yarn is an indie dyed yarn in a base that I really, really love, and it is in this creamy brown speckle yarn, and it is called Gingerbread House, I think. Yep, Gingerbread House, and it is by Siobhan's Crafts. She does some really brightly coloured yarns. There we go, Siobhan's Crafts. And the base is a 85% superwash Polworth, a 15% nylon. And I really like this. It's more hard wearing than merino nylons. I don't have to do the slip stitching on them. But you're still getting a indie dyed yarn that's nice and hard wearing. So I really, really like her bases. I have knit another couple of pairs, I think, in her bases, and I hope to buy some more probably at some point this year, so I can highly recommend those. She is a UK based dyer. I haven't got the picture to hand, I'm having to remember this, do this from memory. The colour work, okay, the colour work I did with many yarns. So the green is West Yorkshire Spinners 4-ply, again in the colourway Spruce, which is 1000 and I can't read that, it's printed very badly, 1006 I think, or 1008. The red is some leftover Drops Fable in bright red, and the background colour for where the cups of cocoa are is West Yorkshire Spinners in the colourway Nutmeg. It doesn't actually have the colourway written on this, so I think it's Nutmeg. It's Nutmeg or Cinnamon, but again, the project page will be down below. And that was for the background for the cups. And what other colour do we have? The white. The white is Drops Fable in the colourway 100. And Drops Fable do 2 shades of white in the Fable. One of them is like an undyed yarn, which if I grab an undyed yarn to compare, it is quite a creamy white. And they also do a brighter white, which is what I wanted for the cream and such like. So you can see how much difference there is. It's quite cream, and that one is a brighter white. The light is not great in here because it is a very dull January day and it is howling a gale, but it is a brighter white than an undyed yarn. I knit these on a 2mm needle for the body, and then the colour work, what I did, well, right, I knit a 9-inch circular for the body, and then when I came to do, I'm trying to find my needles, when I came to do the colour work chart, what I did was I knit these 2 up instead of top down, which is as the pattern is written, top down. I increased my stitch count from 60 stitches, I think it was, up to 72 stitches for the colourwork chart. And then I also knit the colourwork chart in a 2.75mm 9-inch circular. So I was also going up needle size as well as stitch count, and that would give me enough stretch, because there isn't much stretch in colourwork, to be able to get it over my high instep feet. And that worked out very well. I was concerned that when I was knitting it that it was going to be snug, but actually once I cast off and everything, it fit perfectly fine. I did block them, the colourwork section, before I wore them, and I never normally block socks, and I was able to wear them. They were dry enough on Christmas Day to put them on Christmas morning, and that is why I don't have them with me, because they are in the laundry. Very happy with them. Looking forward to knitting some more colourwork socks. I did some Halloween ones in October, and although I didn't enjoy the process particularly, doing the Christmas ones a slightly different way this time. For example, the Halloween ones I did top down, which is the first time I've done a top down sock. I still prefer toe up. So that is my Christmas socks. The only other Christmas socks I knit were for my husband, and again I will put the picture on here because he has worn those too. And I just knit him some vanilla socks, and I was surprised at just how much yarn a pair of socks my husband takes to get them just how he wants them. He likes a longer leg than I do. Sorry about that, my camera decided to switch off. So my husband likes a longer ankle, so I knit 60 stitches on the ankle for him rather than 40 for myself, and he has much longer feet than me and a bigger heel than me, so there was a lot of extra yarn used. The main yarn that I used for the body of the sock is Stylecraft Head Over Heels in the colourway Vixen, and it is a self-striping yarn, and to be honest, they looked not as festive knit up as they did in the yarn ball itself. I think it's because the stripes are so wide that you kind of lost the effect of the different colours together that you get in the cake. But that's fine, it doesn't really matter. He likes them, and that's the main thing. And for the contrast, again, I used the Regia Eco line in 3003 for the contrast. Okay, we're whittling down the pile. Next, any other finished objects. What have we got? Yes, I have a pair of wristies that I've been meaning to knit for years. These are the Catching Snowflakes mittens, I think they are called. Just called Catching Snowflakes by Tiny Owl Knits, and they are a simple pair of wristies with mohair snowflakes stitched on the back. They should be, no, they stitch on the front. I'm wearing it on the wrong hand. They are on the front. Catching Snowflakes. There is a snowflake in the palm of each wristie. There should also be snowflakes on the back, but I knit, or crocheted rather, the smallest snowflakes first, and they still came out quite big. And I'd knit the Catching Butterflies wristies from my mum. I think they were, I don't know if they were last year or the year before, and the butterflies for the back were quite small, and they looked really nice, and then nice big butterflies on the palm. But these smaller snowflakes were quite large, and I just thought I would just put them on the palms instead. They have a very simple textured pattern in them. It was very simple to memorize, really easy to execute, and I think I knit these, did I knit these on a circular or a magic loop? It's been a little while since I finished them. I've used 3mm and 3.5, so I'm assuming I knit these magic loop, but these knit up very, very quickly. I think I did one a day, and then spent the next 2 weeks procrastinating doing the crochet snowflakes, but I did them, and I'm very happy with them. I did knit them bigger than the pattern gauge. It was recommended to use 2.75mm needles and 3.25, but they would have been a little, well, no, I knit half of one of them on a smaller needle, and realised they were going to be, although they fit, they would work better if they were knit on a bigger needle and fit my big housewife hands, and they worked out much better. So that is the Catching Snowflakes mittens. Now after Christmas, I couldn't resist casting on more socks. Oh, actually no, the first pair I cast on Christmas Eve, and were my Christmas Eve cast on. And then as soon as I finished those, I was casting on a second pair. So these knit up so fast because they are knit with DK weight yarn, a new yarn to me, commercial sock yarn. And the first pair that I cast on Christmas Eve come out looking lovely and green, like chopped herbs. These are knit with Drops Fiesta sock yarn. I think it's quite a new range of theirs, and it is a DK weight sock yarn, and it is so dark in here I can barely read the label. It doesn't look so dark on camera, but believe me, it is dark in here. It is a 75% wool, 25% polyamide base, and like I said, it is a DK weight. The first pair I had a reasonable amount left over from 2 50-gram balls, and I knit these with my 2.75mm 9-inch circulars that I used for my cocoa socks. This yarn colourway I think is called Herb Garden, and again I just adapted my usual taupe recipe just to account for the amount of stitch. I changed the amount of stitches and so on and rows to make basically the same as my usual vanilla socks, but with less stitches and less rows, but made exactly the same way. But I did a 1x1 rib at the top instead of my usual 2x2. And the second pair in the same range, and I think I will probably get a couple more colours of this, in different colourways rather. This one is called Watermelon, and it is really blowing out on camera. There we go, that's better. It's these lovely shades of pastel greens and pinks, and I knit these exactly the same as the other ones, and I'm really happy with them. I don't wear much in the way of DK weight socks. Sorry, I'm losing my voice now. I don't really wear much in the way of DK weight socks, but I do like them for, you know, on an evening when you've been in the shower and you get your pyjamas on and you're just going to lounge in front of the TV. That is the time for cozy DK weight socks, and that tends to be the time I put them on. They just, I don't know, they just have that cozy feel after, you know, when you've been in the shower. So DK weight socks for post shower coziness. And that is all my socks. Thank goodness for that. That was a lot of socks. I do obviously intend to knit more socks in the future because I just love knitting socks. They're my go-to mindless knitting. I've knit so many socks over the years now that I don't have to think about it. I don't have to follow a pattern or anything. I can just knit them, which I never thought I would get to that point. If you're thinking, oh, I could never do that, 4 years ago, I was the person who thought there is absolutely no way that I could just knit socks with no pattern. In fact, the lady who I spoke about at the beginning of the podcast, she was a very fast sock knitter, no pattern and so on, top down. And I remember thinking years ago that there was no way I would be able to do that. But here we are. So I think that's all the finished objects, and that just brings me up to my current works in progress, which thankfully is only 3 items. So let's start with what you've already seen before on the podcast if you've been here before. I started this cardigan a few years ago, and then it got put on hold, and then it got picked back up again and restarted in the autumn. And I'm having to be careful because I'm working on a sleeve and I have all my yarns attached, so I'll just pop that down there. This is the Witching Hour Swan Shawl, adapted to be a cardigan. It is a fabulous colourwork yoked garment with all these bird skulls on it, which I think looks fantastic in these yarns, if I do say so myself. The original pattern is by Hannah Mann, and like I said, it is a swan shawl pattern, and it is supposed to be knit with DK weight yarn. I am knitting this with fingering weight yarn, and therefore it won't have such a deep yoke like as a swan shawl. It'll be much more sensible. I don't do swan shawls. They're just too, they don't suit my lifestyle. If I was sat at a computer in an office all day, it would be perfect. It'd be really cozy, but I'm moving around and doing stuff all the time, and it lifting up all, it would drive me crazy. So I'm doing a cardigan, which I will be able to wear with dresses or whatever. The yarns I'm using are 2 of my own yarns from when I was a yarn dyer. I don't dye yarns to sell anymore, but I do have quite a bit of old stash of my own left over. So I'm using 100% unwashed, 100% non-superwash Blueface Leicester in the colourway Spellbound, which is a light fingering weight, and I'm also using an undyed oatmeal Shetland yarn for the contrast colour, which the camera doesn't, there we go, you can see a lovely oatmeal colour. And it is working out well, although I'm not entirely sure why I decided to knit a light fingering weight garment with 3.5mm, because it's quite an open gauge. It looks fine, but my gauge, my tension on my gauge has been terrible lately. It's been really uneven, and it's really showing up with this garment and another item that I'm actually knitting currently. I'm not sure what I'm going to be able to do about that, the unevenness I mean, but the cardigan is working up fine. I've just started the first sleeve, which is why I'm trying to be careful, but I couldn't work much on this last night because it is such a dark yarn and the lighting is too poor to be able to see where my decreases are for the sleeve. So this will be my knitting in the daytime knitting for the moment until I get to a point where I'm just knitting stockinette without decreases again. I have stopped the body part way. It is kind of midway between my waist and my hip crease, simply because I don't want to run out of yarn when it comes to do the sleeves. So I'm going to knit the sleeves, and then whatever's left I can knit the length of the cardigan, which is kind of what I do most of the time for garment making, is get a good length on the body, get it to kind of minimum sort of length, and then work on the sleeves and then use up what I have left, or at least know that I have enough left over. I mean, I haven't had enough for the sleeves. I've been talking so long now, my brain is turning to porridge. Okay, what else have we got? Yeah, this one. So it's not socks. I know, surprising. Little bag, not socks. I have been meaning to knit this shawl for a few years. I bought the yarn for it specifically with this pattern in mind from the last Edinburgh Yarn Festival, which I think was 2018, something like that. And it is the Silverleaf shawl. And this pattern was kindly gifted to me by AJ. She has an Etsy shop, which she hasn't got anything at the moment, but when she has her shop up and running again, I will be sure to link it below in whichever podcast episode is relevant. The pattern is by Lisa Hannes, and it has been in my queue for, like I said, several years, so thank you very much, AJ. I am really enjoying working on this. It's nice and simple currently. It is at the easy, mindless knitting stage, which is just what I need right now after all of the festivities. It doesn't show very well on this picture, but it is mostly garter. It is an asymmetrical triangle shawl with mostly garter and eyelet rows, until you get to towards the end when we have this wonderful leafy lace border at the end. I'm not sure if there's a better picture. Yeah, there we go. This pattern is completely chewed to bits by one of my cats. I need to sellotape it back together. I was not best pleased with her yesterday. But you can see on this picture, there we go, it is all this garter and eyelets, and then you knit this border towards the end, and then there's a little more garter as well. It is gorgeous. I'm really happy with it. Not so happy with the cat. So far I have knit, if we get a bit, I'm going to have to put it on a longer cable I think tonight, but I have knit several sections of this garter. I think there's around 10 garter sections between the eyelets before you get to the lace work, and I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them already. And I have loads of yarn, so depending on how big it looks once I get all of the sections knit, I think it's 10 sections. Yeah, there's 11 including the first setup section. If I think it needs more length before the border, I will weigh how much yarn I have left and then decide if I want to add more sections before doing the leafy lace border, and I also have to check how many stitches are in the pattern repeat for that border. But I have all this still on the first skein, and I have 60 grams left on this skein left over from the lace section I used this for on my Winter Wonder shawl that I knit a couple of years ago. It is a merino nylon stellina base, which is probably not going to show in this light very well or focus very well. There, you can kind of see it sparkling a little there. It is by a yarn dyer who unfortunately is no longer dyeing yarn. I end up with too many yarns where you can't actually get hold of them anymore, and I do apologise for that. But the yarn is by Old Maiden Ant Yarns. Focus is all over the place today. There, Old Maiden Ant Yarns, and it's in the colourway Dreek. I fell in love with this yarn when I saw it at Edinburgh, and it just had to be, it had to come home with me. I had been looking for a silver grey for this shawl, and this one was perfect. Okay, the only other object I have to show today, thank goodness, because this is going to be another long one, is I finally cast on a sweater that has been on my Make 9 for about 3 years, and that is the Isbre sweater by Ellie of Skein-Dee Knits. And I have done the top section before the colourwork. I will show the pattern in just a moment. And I am steeking it, which is not going to show very well because it is all in one colour currently, because I've only just started the first row of colourwork. But you can see I have a steeking section here in the centre. I have the collar, which obviously doesn't carry on over the steek, and I have added short rows so it is wider at the back than it is at the front. The pattern, like I said, is by Ellie of Skein-Dee, and it is a colourwork yoked pattern, but the colourwork is quite a small section on the yoke. You have quite a bit of top and then this small section of colourwork, rather than it being a whole colourwork yoke, and then the body is just plain like this. The yarns I'm using are both Drops Flora. This one is colourway number 03, and it is this heathered grey, heathered light grey, and I'm also using a mid grey in the same range, Drops Flora. And Drops Flora is an alpaca blend, and I do like alpaca in my garments for warmth. This is a 65% wool and a 35% alpaca base. I don't know, have I got the label? Yes, 04 is for the mid grey. I find, although wool is warm, alpaca is warmer, and it can get quite cold here, and I find sometimes I'll be up and about for an hour and I'm still feeling quite cold and quite chilled, and I realise I'm wearing a wool sweater, and then I go and switch to one of my alpaca garments, and 10 minutes later I'm toasty. So for me, alpaca, it has an edge over just plain wool. And I'm not just talking about merino wool, I mean like this. Well, actually this is an alpaca blend, so I'm lovely and cosy warm here. But if I was wearing my Skog and Fjall sweater, which is 100% is it Highland wool, something like that. So it's a woolly wool, not a scratchy wool, but it is a woolly wool. It's warm, but it just doesn't have the same level of warmth as an alpaca blend or an alpaca yarn. I can wear a very lightweight alpaca cardigan or sweater and be warmer than wearing a heavier weight wool sweater, and it's lighter and it's just a bit more comfortable and easier to work in a lighter weight garment than it is a heavier weight one. So those are all of my finished objects and works in progress for this episode. Thank goodness. It also means that hopefully next time I won't have quite so much to go through. Hopefully. I keep saying that all the time and I keep leaving it too long between episodes, so apologies for that. Okay, what other stuff do we have to talk about? I have many of the projects in the pipeline that I'm planning on knitting all year, basically. I am going to be recording my Make 9 for this year, and there are mostly garments, not all garments, but there are many garments. I'm still trying to get through my substantial drops yarn stash that I bought several years ago. With certain I didn't just randomly buy yarn, they were with certain projects in mind, and that's why some of these projects have been in the queue for so long, because the yarn is there specifically for that project. Like the drops flora that I'm using for the Isbre cardigan I've been meaning to make for several years, and this one actually was one of the few times where I've actually bought extra yarn to make a sweater that came along unexpectedly. But most of the time I have sweaters that I'll talk about on the podcast that people were talking about 5 years ago, because they have been in my queue for so long. But although I have a good amount of knitting time each day, and I tend to knit most evenings, you can only knit so quickly, especially when it comes to garments. Socks, yes. Garments, that take that little bit longer. What else have we got? I've ordered my seeds. If you don't know, like I said, we have a small homestead or small holding, and we grow quite a bit of our own vegetables and fruit, and so I put in my seed order in nice and early. Everything I wanted was in stock, which is great. There's nothing worse than coming to mid-January, leaving it late, and the exact varieties you want are just not available. I had that issue with tomato seeds last year. So we need to get some of those things in as soon as those seeds arrive, because every year we mean to plant our tomato seeds early, and every year we leave it that little bit too late. I'm still undecided on where to place videos that I plan to record this year. If you've been following along on my vlogs in the past, I usually do Vlogtober. I got a small van this year, and I intend to turn it into a little camper van so that I can get off island sometimes and go on little trips, and I'm going to be kitting it out as a camper van. And I plan to vlog what I'm doing as I build it, but I'm not sure if I'm going to put those videos on this channel or whether to create a separate channel, and I just don't know. Obviously I do vlogs in Vlogtober, but I'm not sure whether to just say, you know, the YouTube algorithms don't matter, or whether to keep it as a separate channel, make a separate channel for that. Another thing is, I spoke about potentially vlogging kind of the jobs and the stuff we do around the homestead, like the vegetable growing and planting and all that sort of stuff. And again, it's one of those things that I just don't know whether to put those vlogs on this channel or whether to create another channel for those. And I would really appreciate your opinion on what I should do, whether I should keep them separate on a different channel and just say, oh, I have this other channel where I do blah blah blah, or whether to add them on this channel as well. I know when I've done random vlog type topics before in the past, they don't do so well on this channel compared to my other videos, which doesn't really bother me, but it says YouTube algorithm is weird, or I just don't know, because I also plan on doing more craft based tutorials on this channel too. I do have a few, like seeking video and spinning stuff, and I do tend to do more of those, which obviously will be on this channel. It's just the other topics I don't know whether to keep them on here and just keep it all as, this is me, this is all the different dimensions of me, these are all of my interests, and this is me as a whole person all in one place, or to separate it out for people that are maybe just interested in that topic, or people that are just interested in the craft topic and just not interested in the other bits. So like I said, I would value your opinion on what to do for the best with that, because I'm just of two minds and I just cannot decide. I don't think there's an awful lot else to talk about. Like I said, I have lots of gardening plans for this year. We are going to expand our vegetable growing and gardening this year, and like I said, I have the van to kit out, and I want to get away for some trips this year too. Other than that, I don't think there's much else that's really happening right now. January is a quieter month, thankfully, usually, touch wood. So yeah, I'm just gonna leave it there. This is gonna get too long and I need a cup of tea now. So I will speak to you soon on the next video, and yeah, thank you for watching. Bye bye.